I'm Karen Johnson, and I'm going to demonstrate for you bias bars. These are metal bars that come in 7 different sizes in the package, and it allows you to make very tiny bias stems for embroidery, or larger as large as you want to go. But it lets you be very precise, and you don't have to turn the fabric tube inside out with this method. So I'll show you in a second. So first off, you need to find the bias of your fabric. I've just grabbed any piece of fabric that I had around. I'm making short strips today, but you can make these as long as you want. And as long as you know where the selvage is and you've cut a straight right angle, you can find the bias simply by folding it on the diagonal. Pull back there so you can see that. So this is your bias edge, and this is the edge you're going to cut. So I just trimmed off the edge of that bias section so that I've got a fresh, sharp, clean edge. So the instructions tell you exactly what to do. I've chosen a 3/8 inch bar that's going to give me 3/8 inch finished bias, and the instructions have told me to cut 1 1/8 inch strips. So I've done that. So because I've done it double thickness, I've actually got 4 strips here. And you can keep on going until your fabric's out or until you have enough bias to complete your project. Now it's time to stitch. This is going to feel a little odd, but you're actually going to put wrong sides together. So you're actually going to be stitching so that the right side of the fabric is out, and you're going to fold your strip in half, and you're going to stitch 1/8 inch away from the edge. Now my machine doesn't have an 1/8 of an inch marking on it, so I just put a piece of painter's tape there, and I put my needle in the down position, measured over 1/8 of an inch, and put it down in place so that I can then just stitch and run my bias piece right along the edge. Now as you're stitching, do be careful not to tug on this too much because you're working with the bias and you don't want to stretch it out of shape. So just sew a seam all the way down the whole length of this with the fabric folded in half, wrong sides together. So I finished my seam. Now I'm going to take the metal bar, that's the size I've selected, and just slide it right in there. I'm going to slide it all the way down, and then I'm going to go to the ironing board. Now for the cool part. I've slid my bias bar in. Now notice I can make this piece as long as I want. I've got a tail here. As I press the top part, then I'll just move it on down and I can press as many feet of this bias that I have. But the seam is not going to be on the side. The seam, you just move it, manipulate it. I'm using one hand, sorry. Manipulate it so that it's in the center of that bar. And when you press it, your seam is going to be on one side of your bias, which will eventually be the back of your bias. That's the cool part of this. I'll press it and come back and show it to you. So I've used a hot steam iron, and I pressed that piece, and then when I run out of space, then I just kind of ruched it up a little bit and pushed the bar into the next section so that I can press this whole piece. So I moved the bar all the way through my piece, pressed it along the way, and then I pulled the bar out. Do be careful, this is metal, so I recommend a hot pad or something if the metal is still hot before you pull it out. But my finished bias here, I'm looking at the back side, but when you flip it over and look at the front, you don't see that seam. And now you have a very flexible piece of bias for your stems or whatever you want to use. And you can make this very, very thin or very, very wide. I've used kind of my favorite width, which is 3/8 for a stem on a large piece of applique, but I can whip out quite a lot of bias this way. And it's always perfect and you know it's going to be exactly the right size.